Three police officers dangled helplessly, hands bound, accused of carrying a dark secret no one was meant to uncover. A ruthless captor stood before them, knife glinting in his hand. Just when it seemed too late, a U.S. Marine and his loyal German Shepard arrived, and what happened next stunned the world. The dock was eerily silent except for the creaking of old wooden beams swaying above the water. Three police officers hung by their wrists, bound and suspended from thick ropes, their boots barely grazing the planks beneath them. Their uniforms, once symbols of authority, now looked like prison garb under the weight of desperation. Salt air stung their wounds as they struggled against the restraints, but the ropes only cut deeper. Each officer's chest heaved with uneven breaths. One clenched his jaw, glaring at the shadows beyond the dock, while another whispered prayers under his breath. The youngest of the three bit his lip, eyes darting nervously toward the horizon as if salvation might appear there. Fear thickened in the air, but so did something unspoken. Guilt, perhaps, or the burden of knowledge they had never shared. They had been told their time was running out. Their captor had promised answers would never leave their lips alive. And, as the waves slapped violently against the pylons below, the officers knew tonight could be their last. From the shadows, heavy boots echoed across the dock. A figure emerged, broad-shouldered, head shaved, eyes cold as steel. In his fist gleamed a combat knife, its blade catching the dim light of the overcast sky. He moved with the precision of a soldier, but the malice in his grin revealed something darker. This was no man of honor anymore. This was a predator. He stopped beneath the hanging officers, tilting his head as if admiring a trophy. "You thought you could bury the truth," he snarled, his voice gravelly and full of venom. "But secrets rot in the dark, and now you'll rot with them." The knife traced lazy patterns in the air, a cruel reminder of what was coming. The officers stiffened, their silence more telling than words. One officer spat in defiance, but the captor only laughed. "You wear those badges like shields, but I know the truth you hide." He lifted the knife higher, the sound of steel scraping against rope. "When the tide rises, no one will find you, or your secrets." From the narrow path leading toward the pier, a lone figure appeared, shoulders squared, uniform faded but unmistakable. A U.S. Marine, hardened by years of service, scanned the scene with sharp, disciplined eyes. At his side patted a German Shepherd, its ears pricked forward, nose twitching at the scent of danger. The Marine paused at the edge of the pier, taking in the sight of the suspended officers and the armed captor pacing beneath them. His jaw tightened, every instinct screaming that time was running out. The Shepherd gave a low growl, stepping closer, muscles tensed like a coiled spring. Their bond was wordless, but absolute. Both man and dog understood they were standing at the edge of a life-or-death decision. With quiet precision, the Marine signaled for the dog to stay low. His mind raced, calculating distances, weapons, and angles. This wasn't just about a fight. It was about saving lives before the knife carved into the rope. The German Shepherd crouched low, his fur bristling as his amber eyes locked on the captor. Each movement of the man's knife made the dog's muscles ripple with restrained energy. A faint growl rumbled in his throat, so low it blended with the crash of the waves. The Marine placed a steadying hand on his back, but he could feel the animal's heart pounding beneath the fur. The Shepherd's instincts screamed that this man was a threat. He sniffed the air, catching the sharp scent of sweat and adrenaline. The captor's steps, his tone, the way his grip tightened on the blade. It was enough to confirm everything. The dog's gaze never wavered, locked on the enemy as though nothing else in the world existed. The Shepherd's ears flicked, his body coiled tighter, ready to launch. Around them, the dock creaked under tension, the officers hung in silence, and the captor raised the knife higher. In that suspended moment, the dog was no longer just an animal. He was a soldier waiting for the call to strike. The captor's knife slashed toward the nearest rope, its fibers straining under the blade. That was the moment the Marine moved. His voice rang sharp, "Now," and the German Shepherd exploded forward with a furious bark that shattered the silence. The dog's leap was a blur, teeth sinking into the captor's arm before the blade could finish its cut. Chaos erupted. On the dock, the captor roared in pain, swinging wildly, trying to shake the dog free. The Marine charged in, his body slamming against the man's chest, driving him backward into the wooden beams. The knife clattered across the planks, skidding toward the edge of the pier. The suspended officers shouted, their voices straining with a mix of hope and fear as they watched the desperate struggle unfold. The captor fought like a man possessed, fists hammering, fury burning in his eyes. But the Marine's training held steady, every move precise, controlled. With the shepherd growling and pulling against the criminal's arm, the balance shifted. For the first time that night, the captor realized he was outmatched. The German shepherd held firm, jaws locked on the captor's sleeve, refusing to let go. The man thrashed, but each movement only tightened the dog's grip. Seizing the chance, the Marine wrestled the criminal down, pinning his arm behind his back with practiced precision. The doc groaned beneath the weight of the struggle before. The sound of metal cuffs snapped into place. With the threat subdued, the Marine sprinted toward the officers. He grabbed the fallen knife and slashed at the ropes. One by one, the bindings gave way, and the officers collapsed onto the wooden planks, gasping as circulation returned to their arms. Relief spilled across their faces after endless minutes of hopelessness. They were finally free. The youngest officer clutched his wrists, voice trembling. We thought we were done for." The Marine gave a short nod, his eyes scanning the shadows for any other threats. The shepherd returned to his side, panting heavily but still alert, ears perked as if to say the mission wasn't over yet. With the captor restrained on the dock, the Marine pressed him to the ground while the officers steadied themselves, still shaken from their ordeal. One of them, the eldest, fixed the man with a glare. "Why us? Why go this far?" he demanded, his voice hoarse but burning with fury. The criminal spat bitterly, his words laced with venom. "Because you know too much. You stumbled into something that wasn't meant to see the light of day." From his jacket, officers pulled a leather-bound folder crammed with photos, forged documents, and maps. Inside was the truth, not evidence of police corruption as he had claimed, but proof of his own sprawling network of extortion, trafficking, and murder. Gasps rippled through the dock as the officers scanned the damning evidence. The so-called dark secret wasn't theirs, it was his all along. He had tried to twist the narrative, frame the very men sworn to uphold justice. Now, exposed and powerless, his desperate lies unraveled in the night air. The real villain had finally been unmasked. The night ended with the captor in chains, his crimes laid bare for all to see. The officers, though battered and bruised, stood side by side, breathing free air again. Their eyes turned to the Marine and the German shepherd, the unlikely saviors who had risked everything when no one else was there. Gratitude radiated in their faces, words too small to capture the weight of what had been given back to them. Life, a TA ceremony. The officers stood proudly as the German shepherd trotted onto the stage, wearing a medal around his neck. Applause thundered through the hall as the Marine saluted, his partner sitting tall at his side. But for the Marine, the true honor wasn't in medals or headlines. It was in knowing his training and his bond with his dog had saved innocent lives. The shepherd wagged his tail, eyes bright. Together, they had written a legacy of loyalty, justice, and unbreakable courage.